All right, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and as part of the Rankin Technical College AWD 1000 Web Development Technologies course, I've been doing a series of video presentations based off of the Mozilla Developer Network Learn Web Development series. I'm in the JavaScript portion, and we're talking asynchronous JavaScript, and we're down to about the fourth of, I think, 6 or 7 articles on this, and this is cooperative asynchronous JavaScript timeouts and intervals. All right, and as it says, this particular tutorial looks at the traditional way that JavaScript is provided for running code asynchronously after a set period of time has elapsed or at a regular interval. Now, as we go into this, let me just mention to you, because they'll talk about timeouts and they'll talk about intervals. All right. Now, with a timeout, I liken that back in the olden days. Let's see if we can find this here. So back in the old days, I had an alarm clock that actually looked kind of like this one right here. All right. And what would happen is I would set the alarm, and if I woke up before the alarm was supposed to go off, I could press this button down and turn the alarm off. All right. But after that, if I didn't wake up, it would just sit and go off, and then probably eventually I would turn it off. All right. So what does that have to do with anything? Well, then we went to like something like this. And I've got something like this now, except it's not a radio. All right. But you had something that was more like this. And you could come in and again, you could set the alarm. But now, if the alarm went off, you could hit the snooze button and go to sleep for 9 or 10 more minutes, and then it would go off again, and you could hit the snooze button again, and you could typically do that up to an hour. So what does that have to do with anything? Well, if you talk about a timeout is kind of like a one and done. It's like the old-fashioned alarm clock. It goes off, you press it, boom, it's off. The interval is more like the clock radio. Yeah, it goes off, but then you hit snooze and it goes off again in 9 minutes, and you hit snooze and it goes off again in 9 minutes, etc. All right. So just like that's my own little beginning to this. Okay. All right. So says there, for a long time, the web platform has offered JavaScript programmers a number of functions that allow them to asynchronously execute code after a certain time interval has elapsed, and repeatedly execute a block of code asynchronously until you tell it to stop. All right, these are. And as you probably guess, we can click on any of these and get more information. But let's just quickly look at what we have. So the first thing is SetTimeout. As it says, execute a specific block of code after a specific time interval has elapsed. SetInterval. Execute a specific block of code repeatedly with a fixed time delay between each call. Hopefully you see what I was talking about then with the alarm clock and the clock radio. And then finally, request animation frame. Notice the modern version of SetInterval executes a specific block of code before the next repaints the display, allowing an animation to be run at a suitable time frame rate regardless of the environment it is being run in. So the asynchronous code set up by these functions runs on the main thread after their time has elapsed. Okay, fine. Let's jump down to here, right there. As it says here, it is important that you can and often will run other code before a set timeout executes. Again, that's kind of like the amount of time you'd sleep before the alarm goes off, or between iterations of set interval. Again, you would probably sleep in that 9-minute period. Depending on how processor intensive these operations are, they can delay your async code even further, because any async code will execute only after the main thread is available. All right. It says you will learn more on this matter as you progress through this article. In any case, these functions are used for running constant animations and other background processing on a website or on an application. So, as mentioned here in the following lessons, the following sections, we'll find out what they're about. So notice we'll have set timeout, then we'll have set interval, and then we'll have things to keep in mind about each, and then we'll have the request animation frame. Now, there's no way I'm 6 minutes in that I'm going to get into this and get through all of this in one taping. So let's just jump into set timeout. So, as mentioned, set timeout executes a particular block of code after a specified timeout has elapsed. Notice that it takes parameters, a function to run or a reference to a function defined elsewhere, a number representing the time in milliseconds. Now, 1,000 milliseconds is equal to 1 second. So again, 10,000 milliseconds would be 10 seconds, etc. All right, and that's the amount of milliseconds that you want to wait before executing the code. As it says there, if you specify a value of 0, the function will run as soon as possible. All right, and it says see the note before on why it runs as soon as possible and not immediately. So we'll look at that in just a second. All right, and then finally, zero or more values that represent any parameters you want to pass into the function when the function is run. Now, let's look at that note because it's a fairly important concept here. The specified amount of time or the delay is not guaranteed time of execution, rather minimum time. So just putting in a 0 doesn't mean it executes like that. The callbacks you pass, as it says, cannot run until the stack of the main thread is empty. So until all of your non-asynchronous stuff has run, then that stuff will run. So as a consequence, code like this that's shown here, set timeout function 0, will execute as soon as the stack is empty, not immediately. If you execute code like that, but then immediately after run a loop that counts from 1 to 10 billion, for example, the callback will be executed after a few seconds. All right, so let's take a look at the example that they have here. It says in the following example, the browser will wait 2 seconds before executing the anonymous function. All right, so in other words, we're telling it to time out for 2 seconds, and after 2 seconds, it should give us an alert that says, hello, Mr. Universe. Wow. So let's look at the source code. Very short. It's all right here. Let's copy it. Let's put it into where we have been putting in our code right now. All right, and we're going to actually do a couple things here. We're about to run it, but as we do, and I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do this in another window or not, but I'm going to try it anyway. So I'm going to come in here. I'm opening up a second window. At least I tried to. So let's come in here, and I'm going to type in time.is. And I want to, let's see, move tab to a new window. There we go. So I've got that running in here. Why? Who cares? You might in just a second. We'll see. So I'm going to grab this, and I'm going to shrink it way down. Just big enough where I can see it. So then I'm going to stick it over here someplace. All right. Then I'm going to come into here. I've got this code that I'm ready to run now. And it's in here. All right. So let's see. I think this is my async code, but we're going to find out right now. I did not save. There, now I've saved. So what should happen is when I run this, I should be able to go 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, and that alert should come out. Let's see if indeed that's what happens. All right, so there's the time over there I can watch. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, there it is. All right. Now, again, that's more an old-fashioned way, but it's a way that I can stop something from happening immediately until in this case a time interval occurs. So as it says, the functions you specify don't have to be anonymous. You can give your function a name and even define it somewhere else and pass a reference to it in there. So here we did everything right inside of there. Here it says with a function defined separately, say hi. And here we're just saying the same thing. So let's do that. So I'm going to grab this, copy it to the clipboard. Let's take everything that we've got here and let's comment it out. Oops. Let's verify that indeed it's been commented out by going back to here and to here and just running the program. And you'll notice there's nothing now. Just going to sit there and spin because I've not put any code in there. All right, and that's good. So I'm going to come back to here and I'm going to put it in right here. So here we've got a separate function. There's our say hi. And here, whoops, we've got this let my greeting. And what that's doing is that's going to call this function right here after a 2-second wait. So I'm going to save this and we're going to run it again. And please, if you can, try to watch over here. And I realize I'm going to have to play around with this to try to get it to show. All right, and hopefully that won't go away. And it does. Unexpected identifier on line 18. Well, that's good actually that I had a mistake there. I've got that thing there. Don't know how I got that, but I got that there. All right, so I'm going to, right here, when I do this, this is going to disappear and I'm going to try to bring it back. In fact, let's just forget about it. Let's just run this and we'll go 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, okay? And 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. There you go. It came out. So again, no biggie here, but the reason for showing you that was, as they mentioned, you can call it directly or you can call it indirectly. It says this can be useful if you have a function that needs to be called both from a timeout and in response to an event, for example. And of course, there's plenty of other reasons and ways that you might use it. It says, but it can also be used to keep your code tidy, especially if the timeout callback is more than a few lines of code. All right. SetTimeout returns an identifier that can be used to refer to a timeout later, such as when you want to stop it. We'll talk about that in just a minute. Now, when we call this, we weren't passing anything to say hi. But again, it is possible for you to do that. All right. So as mentioned here, any parameters that you want to pass to the function being run inside of SetTimeout must be passed to it as additional parameters at the end of the list. All right. And it says there, for example, you could refactor the previous to say hi to a person's name. So who cares? Well, there they've got Mr. Universe, but now we'll say hello. So if let's go ahead and use this example. And I think you probably get it already. But again, all we're saying in here is we're going to make this function a little bit nicer to work with. And what I mean is, all right, rather than just saying hello, Mr. Universe, I can pass anything I want in there, which again is kind of nice. So instead of Mr. Universe, I'll put my name in there. All right. And it should be the same as what we had before, but now it should say, hello, Jeff Scott. And I can change this and pass whatever I want in there. Or as an example, if I had more HTML in here, I could go and set up a text box, and I could put a name in there. Then I could go and basically, add a button that would call this or whatever and wait 2 seconds. You get the idea, hopefully. So there it is. And let's see if indeed one Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. There it is. Hello, Jeff Scott. All right. Hopefully, like I said, and I'm not trying to bore anybody or waste your time, but the stuff is important. All right. And I'm going through it in a very deliberate way on purpose. So let's for this section, let's finish the clearing timeouts. If a timeout has been cleared, you can cancel it before the specified time has elapsed by calling clear timeout. And again, that's similar to if I've got my alarm clock set. For example, I do have a regular alarm clock and I've got it set for 5:15 in the morning. And if I wake up and it's 5:12, well, I'm not going to be able to sleep for 3 minutes. It'll probably do me more harm than good. So I might just turn off the alarm 3 minutes early and then go, get ready. Okay? So to cancel a timeout, you do it like this. Clear timeout followed by the My Greeting. It says, see Greeter app for a slightly more involved demo that allows you to set the name of the person and cancel it. Okay, let's take a look at that. All right, I see what they're doing. All right, so enter a name, Jeff, greet. If I cancel it, it won't show. If I click greet, don't know how long it's going to wait, but you could see it. Okay? So again, just imagine I've got an alarm clock set, and it's supposed to say when it wakes me up, good morning. How about put good morning, Mr. Scott? All right. So I've got it set for 5:15. And it's 5:10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. There it is. All right. It's the next day. And I set it again. Oh, guess what? I just woke up. It hasn't gone off yet, but I turned it off now. Now it won't show because I cleared it. All right. And if we look at the text, the code for this, of course, it's going to be a little bit more complex. This is a really, really good example. All right. In fact, I'm going to grab that example and I'm going to steal it. And I'm going to call this on my desktop. I'm just going to call it alarm clock with timeout.html. Okay. All right. That's where I wanted to get to right now. All right. So before we go into the set interval, I'll stop where I am, and we'll do that in the next taping.